All right, welcome back to the Verdict Studios in our global headquarters here in Lagos. From Polstream. On Polstream, of course, the idea is to get feedback, to get people talking, to find out what's trending, what the subjects are, what are the concerns that people have, and indeed all of that. And we trust that you enjoyed that and that from time to time you'll join us as we go back to the Polstream Studios for updates on that with, of course, this time it's Mayowa and Victor at other points in time, with Terry joining via the hologram.
The hologram, that's
from,
right.
From Abuja. But we trust we'll be going back to them from time to time for more on that. But guys, everything about this election will rest on logistics, what we generally put under the umbrella of logistics. Transportation. I heard you ask about the NURTW. I believe that was yesterday. That's in terms of transportation. There are others who are talking about the movement of ballot papers.
And some are still talking about what is the number of PVCs collected. Whether that figure is out yet. We
don't know. Hopefully during the course of this evening, when we get to speak to one of the representatives of INEC, we may be able to find out about that. But for now, we will be talking about the logistics. And I just want to be sure that we have them with us from our Abuja studios. Do we have them now from our Abuja studios? So we will, while we wait for that to happen, we can expand our previous discussion a little, where we're talking about the processes here. When people go to vote, they expect for it to be seamless, for it to be devoid of difficulty, and for them to go through it and go home. We have talked a lot about what could go wrong in the process. And indeed, if our previous experience is anything to go by, what you can think of that can go wrong sometimes, or more often than not, does go wrong. And that's where we are. In terms of security arrangements, in terms of movement of people, of course, there is a shutdown. As we speak right now, the country's borders have been shut.
And shut 6 p.m.
Sorry?
I think it's about 6 p.m.
About 6?
The borders.
But the key point is that they will be shut, which means nobody can come in and nobody can go out. And then there will be this restriction of movement. On the issue of restriction of movement, there are those who are asking the questions. The restriction of movement is from one area to another. Within your vicinity, are you free to move?
Exactly, and that even affects voting, because a lot of people have asked me, oh, my voting unit is not near my house. And
it's in another...
So is it walking distance? So it's going to be a very long trek.
That's it.
To your
so if you are not...
Alternatively, just make up your mind. Someone asked me the same question before I came into the studio, and I told them, well, you have to leave. You must vote. Leave your house at 5. Restriction starts at 6. Yes, leave your house at 5.
Okay, and then drive to the area.
Drive to the area or walk to the area. But then you also need, because I believe that by that time the policemen will already be out there to ensure that there's compliance.
You know, somebody has asked, when will we stop having restriction of movement just because we're having an election? And in some other parts of the world, you find that, I mean, it's something you can do, go back to work.
Yeah, on your way to work. Someone was telling us yesterday, you know, your way to work,
online,
the husband can vote, then on the way back, the two of them wait, the wife will vote, and so on. I tried to juxtapose that situation into our own environment. I just couldn't do it. Even at the worst of imagination. The worst stretch of imagination, I just couldn't see it.
But when people say the next election, 2023, do you think, I mean, with all the challenges, I mean, we showed them the ballot paper a few minutes ago, and, you know, I mean, it's not as so easy to get through it.
Right.
When do you think will be ripe for that e-voting we're talking about, e-collation? Because some of these things, I mean, if you have the click of your mouse, you sort yourself out. Some of these things will be things of the past.
Well, you see, the thing is this. There needs to be a cultural shift accompanied by attitudinal shift. There are those who are used to the manual process. And when you talk about technology, their mind immediately goes to the worst case scenario of what can happen if you are completely dependent on technology. And in our own system, I mean, where you have a situation where even within some very important government offices, public address systems fail for weeks on end, they are unable to repair them, and so on. Then if now think of a country's destiny, as expressed by an election, completely dependent on that kind of
But we are getting
system.
better. We're not where we were technology.
No, definitely not. I mean,
if everybody is social media savvy, why can't we?
Yes, but that's the thing. I'm not too sure that as many people as we think are social media savvy.
Okay.
But that's where the bulk of those who argue against e-voting and e-collation, that's what they hinge on. They'll tell you, if you go to the rural areas where they'll tell you about 75% of our population live, you find out that they don't understand WhatsApp, they don't understand all the social
that
media
we consider as second nature.
But then on the other hand, even in the urban areas, they'll tell you, where's the power for me to charge my device, for me to be able to do that? And then when you do charge, they'll ask you, where's access? Because by the time you buy data that's supposed to last you for 30 days will go for 5 days.
A couple of days.
And then what happened to my data? No
and then the other thing is this, remember the common saying of garbage in, garbage out?
Well, that's one of the questions I was going to put to any of the INEC officials, looking at how far their voter education has gone. I mean, this is the eve of the election. And they say, oh, if you're online and you attend any of their workshops, but like he said about people in the rural areas.
How many people attended those workshops?
But some of them
in the rural areas.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the other side of it is that people in the rural areas use all these social media platforms as well. They use them.
But is it as widespread as it would need to be if we're going to become completely independent?
Let's use the banking institutions, for instance. I know some of these people in some rural areas that walk long distances to use their ATM cards.
Right.
There's that joy
but they want
for
to go
them.
collect money. It is not the same.
We're talking about that's an immediate benefit.
Yeah, we're talking about introducing this.
Yes, you see, going to collect money is an immediate benefit. if you send money to someone at home, and that person says, okay, I have to walk from here to a kilometer and a half in order to access the nearest ATM to collect this money. There's instant gratification from collecting the money. But if I have to walk the same distance to and fro to cast a vote, which I may get there and my name is not there.
It is your civic responsibility.
That is correct. It is my civic responsibility. But as someone was telling us on the program yesterday or the day before yesterday, until and unless it is made absolutely compulsory, it is a criminal offense not to vote, as it is indeed in some countries, then you're not going to make someone come all this far from this distance only for you to then say, you've performed your civic responsibility when he ought to have been on his farm.
But that is where INEC is actually trying to get us.
They need to do a lot more in terms of awareness and this cultural shift that I talked about. You see, when people talk about more developed climes where you can just stop over on your way to work, drop your ballot and so on, it speaks a lot to the integrity the system has already built up.
But, Ladi, those other climes, the issue of voter education is not left to the umpire
alone. In fact, it's not even left to the umpire at all.
The umpire has no business. In fact, we don't even hear about the umpire until...
Let me ask you a question. You're one of Nigeria's top journalists. Who is the electoral umpire in the UK? No, you see, that's the thing. You see, that's the thing. India, the world's biggest democracy, what's the name of the electoral umpire?
So
the people who conduct elections.
How come ours is so popular?
Yes, because ours is so central to everything. They print ballot papers, they procure ballot boxes.
They give you the guidelines.
They give you guidelines. They're the ones moving materials to and fro and so on. Now, all these jobs are widely dispersed and are performed as part of routines elsewhere. That's why in a place like India, I'm sorry to keep using India as an example, but I'm using it as an example only because we're talking of numbers here. I mean, in India, any number between 800 and 1 billion people vote every time they have these elections every 5 years. You can picture the kind of logistics we're talking about. We're only talking of, what, 80 million people? Even now.
That said, do you think, just like we asked on #PollStream, do you think the experience will be better in this year, 2019, compared to, I mean, I don't know if you came out to vote or if you were sitting doing analysis like we're doing now, but if you weren't, do you think that experience will be different with the promises that we've heard from INEC? I don't know.
We sincerely hope so. It would be difficult to swallow if they weren't better. As time goes on, you're supposed to get better at doing things. And we ought to. The process is supposed to get better and better until it gets to a time when, barring one or two hiccups here and there, it should just happen.
Fancy?
Well, I don't want to sound pessimistic.
No, because that's not your role. No.
Yeah, but the thing is, we have structures. As we were having a conversation somewhere, we said, in this country, there are laws or rules for practically everything. There has to be, we have to get to that point where there is, how do you say that, implementation. So you have the reward, a consequence system. So there's a reward and there's punishment. So we have, if we have those rules or laws, as we say we have, then we need to bring them up and everybody understands them and begins to apply them, even from the least to the biggest. That way we can get to where we need to get to a lot faster.
You said two things, you said two things. One that I thought that there should be a great deal of emphasis on is that people understand it.
Yeah.
The process.
Yes, because you see, very often if you start enforcement when a significant proportion doesn't understand what you are enforcing, then you're likely to sweep off a lot of people who know nothing about the process, but who get caught in the middle because they say under the law, ignorance is not an excuse. So if it's the law and you're in contravention of the law, even though you don't understand it, you're going to be punished for not obeying.
But anyway, for tomorrow, which we're looking at as well, it's a good thing we heard that, voters who are visually impaired, that there are now Braille guides that have been made available to them.
Oh yes, we heard from someone like that. We heard from someone yesterday who was talking about that.
Yes, they actually showed them what it looks like, and there's some service announcement, to tell them what to do and the steps. So at least in that regard,
even the physically challenged. You see, that these are some of the small steps. Of course, people will say, we are very good at celebrating small victories, but again, if you don't get large victories often, you celebrate what you get. And in this particular election, physically challenged people with disabilities and special needs people seem to have taken a much bigger, they've become a much bigger cause of attention than they used to be in previous elections. So I expect, again, as you asked earlier, that is part of the improvement that we're expecting. Of course, on election day, whether that then translates, because you see, all of this is very good when we're talking about it in the controlled environment of the studio. But when you then get to the field, you get to the polling area, you get to there are a number of other things that then get introduced.
Which is where I was coming to, because some who have responded to us, even on our hashtag, are still worried about security, are still worried about what could break out on the day, and they even give you the recent campaign rally.
No, I mean, even if up until yesterday, even up until yesterday, there are still sporadic acts of violence here and there in the run-up to all of this.
So are you for or against visible security? There's this whole, they shouldn't be visible, they should be there, and they kept giving us the example of Madagascar.
Oh yes, there's another places where, Dubai, I remember it was, I think it was Dennis Amakri who said, look, Dubai International Airport is one of the most secured institutions in the country, in the world, but that you can pass through the entire Dubai airport without coming across a single security official. Talk less of anybody holding any kind of weapon.
But they're there.
Yes, but they're there.
Yeah.
Yes, but here, sometimes the physical presence of those people and being visible is also a deterrent.
For or against physical presence?
I'll stay in between.
It's not allowed. This voting season,
you're not allowed to
you're either here or you're there.
You're not allowed to stay in between. You see, coming to stay in between is part of our problem.
That's the problem.
It's part of the problem. But you see, Ladi, we do know that in our system, sometimes when you see those men with the uniforms, it tends to
shock you into not wanting to.
But then you see in some other situations, you see those men with the uniform and it shocks you into doing that which you're not supposed to do. So at the end of the day, we're back to what we said earlier, understanding of what we need to, first of all, what do we want to achieve? How do we want to get there? Can we begin to walk that path? So how do we walk that path?
Well, we will ask our guests some of these questions that we ourselves have been battling with. Maybe with benefit of hindsight, maybe their own previous experience, their understanding of the process. I know that we'll take a very short break so that we can bring on our guests at this point in time. When we come back from there, we'll talk to Malaki Ugumadu, and then, of course, we'll talk to Professor Samuel Odeumi, amongst others, on this particular issue. But that will be after this very short break. Please stay with us.